A little bit about our team. Our team are almost all musicians, creative types, and video or techie people. And so we have a lot of fun. We frustrate the heck out of each other from time to time. But at the same time, we have been blessed by God, even though we're not a mega church by any stretch of the imagination. We have been blessed by God with a very creative team. Now, one of the things I didn't say about our church's story is our church's story was not the 5 to 5,000 in 5 minutes, okay? That's not who we were, and that's not who we are. That's why I'm here in the breakout room and not on the main stage. I'm kidding, that's not why. So some of you might be thinking to yourself, in your context, wherever you are, I don't have that kind of team like you do, so I couldn't be able to do some of those things that you guys do. Let me just encourage you to have an open mind. Don't sell yourself short. And these things are not easy, but they are skills that can be developed. And where you're going to start is not where you're going to end up. Where we started is not where we are today. And so wherever you are today, if you start taking some steps in digital ministry, in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, you're going to be blown away at where you are versus where you are then versus where you are now. I want to talk a little bit about ministry waves. About 10 years ago, I think, I heard Rick Warren give a talk about ministry waves. Have any of you guys ever heard that talk that he gives about that? Okay, so basically the analogy or the metaphor that Rick Warren uses is that ministry is like surfing, and surfers know that they don't create the waves. That all a surfer can do is paddle out, position themselves, and then ride the wave when it comes. And then they just keep paddling out, and they keep doing that over and over and over again. In ministry, God makes the waves, right? Like, none of us are smart enough, funny enough, creative enough to make waves. And there is no amount of creativity that we could do to take a human heart to transform them from like death and separation towards God, towards life in Christ. What they were talking about this morning. So God makes the waves, but what we have to do as church leaders is to position ourselves to be able to ride the waves that God's already making, or the waves that are already happening in culture. Culture does make some waves. People in the church will have some events, and come on in if you're welcome. Glad you're here. People in the church will have events in their lives that will make some little waves in the community. Businesses in the local community will make some waves. And so what we have to constantly figure out as church leaders is, what are the waves that God is making right now in our community? What are the waves that are already happening around me, and how might we identify those and leverage those for the Lord and for our church specifically? And surfers, they painstakingly study the spots, they wait for it, they paddle out, and then when they see a wave that looks right, they just go for it. Like one of our other staff members, Obi, he's the guy with the dreads, you see him walking around. He pointed out, he's like, oh, that spot is such and such surf spot. What did he call it? I don't remember. He knew the name of, he knew what this beach's surf spot was. And so this is where I really love this illustration, because the best case scenario that a surfer can do is that they will go out, paddle out hard to maybe catch a wave that might work. A lot of surfers know that a lot of the waves they're going to ride are going to be whitewater. They're going to get on the board, get back down, paddle right back out, and keep trying to do it all over again. But some of those waves that they ride are going to be just epic, life-changing, that they'll remember for many, many years. And so in ministry, whether the wave that we just rode was just a ho-hum Sunday where we did our duty, we loved on the people of the Lord, we did our task, or whether we go home and, man, that was awesome what God did. It is so powerful to remind ourselves that our job is just to keep looking for those waves that are in the community, paddle out as hard as we can, and ride them as they come in. So here's where I'm going with this, okay? 2020 and 2021 and beyond made some significant waves for all of us, right? Not just in our churches, but in our world. In 2019, a literal tsunami was coming all of our ways, and none of us had a clue what was ahead. How many of you ever look at pictures of on your phone of yourself in 2019 and go, man, that fool had no idea what was coming their way? I do, especially when I see, Disney days and things with large gatherings that And there was a period of time, it's like, when are we ever going to have this again? Now with COVID, of course, we understand the word wave very differently. It's like, Lord, please don't the wave die down so people go to church again. And so they're healthy, most importantly. But digital ministry, and here's where I'm tying it in. It was a thing before COVID. It's been around for a long time. But the wave that came into culture in 2020, it's cemented forever that it is no longer an option for churches to be involved in digital ministry. Now, by God's grace, City Church actually began our digital ministry and our streaming journey. I think it was in 2018, Cameron, does that sound about right? And
2017.
2017, okay. And now I know that there are many ministries that began long before that, and even streaming since 2005 and things of that nature. But you know, for a church of our size, a smaller church at that time, we felt like we were ahead of the curve. And you know, looking backwards, you know, our early live video shoots, you look back and you go, oh man, the lighting wasn't right, the angle wasn't what we do today, and different things. But you know what? Here's the thing. Everyone starts somewhere, right? And you start somewhere, and where you end up is not ever going to be where you start. But the principle that I've really taken to heart from that and many other projects that we've done is if you don't start somewhere, you'll never progress anywhere. And so that would be my encouragement to all of you today, wherever you're at, whatever low-tech equipment you think you have, or you know, lack of volunteers, man, just get started and just keep making it better and see what God could do. And now, even though we didn't officially live stream until 2017-18, like he was saying, City Church has been a very video-driven church really since day one. We've done a lot of video content stuff. Now, previously it was kind of like pre-edited stuff and creative things and stuff like that. But live video, as you guys have probably learned in the ministry, it's a whole different ballgame than pre-recorded stuff, because you can't clean things up on the fly. You know, there's very little margin for error, and you know, a lot of systems that can go bad and things like that. So by 2019, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, we were a 2-camera shoot, right, at that point? Yeah. That's about right. And so when the pandemic hit, we were in a good position. And we were poised to handle that. And then came 2020, and by God's grace, when that first wave of the pandemic hit, man, we just rode that wave really well. And we saw our online audience just grow exponentially. And it was really, really cool to honestly feel like this thing that was horrible for the culture was something that God was blessing for our church. Now, the next wave that hit after that wave was all the polarization of culture stuff and the political things and all of that. And so as that kind of kicked in, you know, you started to see people's interests divided between church and everything else that was going on. And then somewhere around May of 2020, I don't know exactly where it was, I think was when most of us started to get the Zoom fatigue real strong in our lives. Yes. And how many of you guys like zoomed out today, you know? I mean, I still think I like Zoom for some stuff. Personally, you know, it's helpful. But sometime around May 2020, it just seemed like the online viewing was the few, the proud, the Marines, you know? Now, we were still getting views. It's not that we weren't, but it had declined from what it first started at. People were eager for in-person worship again, even though it was a weird time in culture, and you know, there were fights about whether we should do it, whether we shouldn't do it, and all that kind of stuff. So the next wave that most of us were riding was some kind of in-person or outdoor thing with some kind of online thing. So we're managing both, right? And so, you know, after that, in 2021, I'm sure we were all hoping that would be the year that everything went back to normal, right? Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Now, through the summer at City Church, I felt like we had some really good momentum, and then the Delta variant hit, right? And it just put a wet blanket on a lot of the people who had started coming back. It just turned the faucet to a drip. And we actually had a pretty good Christmas by the grace of God, so that was pretty cool. Now, normally for us, January is a really good month where we start to see a lot of momentum. Funny enough, you know, just all this the way this hit, January 2022, then the Omicron thing happens, right? And so we didn't get that huge boost like we usually do, at least in our context in January, you know. Then we, and so, why am I talking about all of this? A little snapshot poll that we took in the middle of January showed that at one point on a random Sunday, now again, at the peak of the Omicron thing, and it's on Instagram. So maybe some of these people are going to rate higher to vote online. But a Snap poll showed that 61% of our audience was watching online.
Wow.
And so when we looked at those numbers, at least when I did, I was like, oh, we're not doing bad at all. In fact, we may even be doing better than we were before the pandemic, and everything lines up. You know, our giving has grown over the last 3 years. So overall involvement is relatively more or less the same. And so one lesson has been crystal clear to me from the last 2+ years. If digital ministry wasn't on your radar before, it is now. And it is so vital, and if your church isn't involved in it today, man, I would say your church is probably on life support right now. And so if that is you, it's okay. We're pulling out the paddles right now, and we're going to hook up the oxygen, and we're going to just get you going where you need to go. But it's not a fad, digital ministry. It's here to stay, and we all need to figure out how to embrace it, how to staff for it, how to budget for it. So whenever, for myself, what's been helpful, whenever I think of digital ministry, I try to think about 3 audiences that I'm communicating with, okay? And so here are 3 types of audiences that I think we need to be aware of in the digital ministry era. The first one is the committed local folks. And I would say these people are the lifeblood of your church. Now certainly, these are the every Sunday types, or at least the twice or 3 times a monthers. You know, one of the things that we've seen with COVID is people who used to be twice a monthers or once a monthers.
Yeah.
People who used to be once a monthers are every other monthers now, you know? And so people's definition of what it is to be committed is a little less than what church leaders want it to be in this time. But the committed folks are the lifeblood of our ministries, and I believe that they should be the primary audience that all of us think about when we think about our churches. We should think about them first. They really are the nuts and bolts of our church, and they make up the folks who are putting in the time, who are showing up, who are dedicated, and who are devoted. You know, it's been said that 80% of the time and the money that's invested into every church is done by 20% of the people, or some case 10. And certainly that's true in our context. My guess is it's probably true in many of yours as well. Well, here's the really cool thing about our committed folks audience as it relates to digital ministry. As much as our committed folks are there in person and they love to do that, those folks are even more excited when their church has a great digital ministry presence. It only makes them more committed to whatever it is. And so good digital ministry doesn't push away committed people. It actually makes them more excited to be a part of it, because if they can't be there or they're afraid to be there or whatever's happening in life, they still want to feel like they're a part of what's happening in their church and they're in the know. So especially for this crowd, even your committed people, it's vital to have a very good digital ministry. The second crowd I think of are these semi-committed local community folks, okay? Now, in other contexts, people might have called these or referred to this group as the crowds, okay? And the problem with the crowds in the church is that they're just not showing up at the way that they used to be, at least in our context. Apparently for Josh Husman on the main stage, he's at 180%. But for the rest of us, we can just say, man, the crowds, we're not seeing them the way that we used to. And there was a little short window of time when I was kind of panicked, like, oh no, like, where are these people? Why aren't we seeing these numbers? But what I've come to see is that those folks aren't tuned out. They're watching online in large amount of numbers. And so those semi-committed folks are the people who have been acquainted with our community or in our community for probably many years. Some of them may have started to return to occasional in-person worship since COVID, but I'd say a big chunk of them, at least in our context, still haven't done so. Now, interesting, in the last few weeks, we've started to see a little bit of a trickle, some more start coming back, a little bit of a trickle, some more start coming back. But some of the folks that we hadn't seen the entire pandemic that I was confident we had lost, we've started to see them again. So the point is this. Digital ministry is vital in 2022, even to the crowds. And I would say the crowds, that's where they're watching right now, is online. And so we need to continue the hard work of engaging those who aren't as connected as we'd like them to be, to drive them to deeper connection. And we need to continue to relationally reach out to those people and encourage them to come back if we haven't seen them, to always keep those open doors for people to come back. Now, in our context at City Church, I'll just be real transparent about what this looks like. We used to have 2 full services, or mostly full services at City Church. We don't anymore. Okay, and as a pastor, there was a period of time when that just bummed me out. However, when I've looked and we've combined the numbers with online, we realized, man, there's a good amount of people from those crowds that are still there. They're just watching and connecting online, and we need to serve them well. And so the crowds have shifted from in your pews to on their phone or on their TV. So that's kind of the thing there is Jesus in his ministry, he ministered to the crowds, right? We didn't have too much of before in City Church, and this one's been fun to watch it grow. So you got the committed folks, you got the semi-committed folks, or maybe the crowds. The third crowd that I would say we always have to be cognizant of is the content crowd. And now, again, we had a tiny bit of this, but these are folks who love our church, they love our ministries, but they're not defined by the geographical boundaries of our churches anymore. Many of them may live nowhere near your church, but they enjoy your sermons, they like the worship, or some kids thing you did, or whatever. Most of these people, I would say the overwhelming majority of these people, in my experience, I found they're not seeking connection with our church, but they like our content. And many of us didn't have that opportunity to minister to those people before, and now we do. Now there are a tiny sliver of people who live beyond our geographical boundaries who are also seeking connection with our ministry in one of those ways, which brings up a huge question we've probably all had to deal with. Can we effectively pastor people who don't live in our local communities? How many of you, show of hands, have had to deal with this issue in your church? Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. Now, we have one lady right now, I'll just give you an example. She watches online from Florida, and she's in a Zoom small group right now. Now, if you ask me privately, I would say that it is an acceptable exception knowing her story. If I were near her, and when we've talked and things like that, it's, the ideal would be you need to find something in your local community with people you can connect with right there. So as much as I love digital ministry, I am still a local church person. I still believe in the value of that. Now, there are churches out there that have just totally flipped the lid on that script. And they've said, you know what? We're no longer defined by geographical boundaries. Anybody, anywhere, anytime can be a part of whatever your church's name is. If I'm totally honest with you, I'm not there as a pastor. I still believe strongly in the local expression of the church and its value, that should be the model for biblical community. Now, I get that we can do a lot digitally still, but I personally, off the record, when these people come into our circles in different ways, I say, it's great that you're in our content crowd, but you need to dive into something that's closer to you. But we do allow, I would call it an acceptable exception from here and there. So that's kind of our answer as far as how we deal with that. We're not trying to be internet celebrities in our context, but it is still really cool though, right? That folks beyond our geographical area, we can communicate with them via our content. And I would imagine most of you guys probably have some of those content people as well. Okay, so those are the 3 crowds that I'm always thinking of. That's what I'm talking to. I'm talking to the committed people, I'm talking to the semi-committed or to the crowd, and I'm talking to the content people. Always keep those in your mind when you're talking. Now, here's some ideas that I believe anyone can do to do digital ministry better. Some of them cost some money, some of them don't, okay? The first one doesn't cost you anything. Leverage everything you can do with your phone, okay? Literally leverage whatever you can do with your cell phone. And I'm not even talking about using social media and making videos. I'm just even talking about texting people. If all you did today was texted 10 people who used to go to your church but who aren't currently right now and said, how are you doing? Can we get lunch? You would be amazed at how many of those 10 would reply, probably by the end of the night, and say, oh wow, it's great to hear from you, Pastor such and such. I would love to get lunch. I'd love to get dinner. Let's get together. And imagine if 1, 2, or 3 of them decided after you got lunch with them to start coming back to your church. You would be floored with that outcome and that decision. So that doesn't cost any of us anything. That's as low tech can be. I think, like even, grandparents and great-grandparents even, they figured out how to text and things like that. So just send some text messages from your phone to connect with people. People are lonely, they're looking for that connection, and if you work your brain hard enough, you can think of some names. Take pictures of a volunteer every week at your church. Oh, here's such and such. He's been helping out with the children's ministry, or with, greeting, or with the tech. And then put in a little description and say, we always need more people. If you're interested in being involved, here's how you could. I know some of these awesome churches who make all their pictures look like everyone's a influencer or something like that. You don't need to do that to connect with people. Sometimes the more low tech, the better, because it's real. People want to. I think people are looking to find somewhere where it looks like they feel like they could connect, and not everybody is perfect and put together. You could make a video where someone shares a testimonial about, hey, I started coming to the church and I didn't know anybody, and now look what God's done in my life. And you post that on there, and you just let God brag, or just brag on what God's done in somebody's life. That doesn't cost you anything. It's low tech. It's really easy to do. It really doesn't even take that much time. Make some highlight videos. And now these take a little bit more time because maybe you have to edit them, put them together. But even something like Instagram Reels has started to make it so easy for the average person, just straight from your phone, right from Instagram, to just with the tap of a few buttons, put some pictures in there, post it online, put a music track, and people think it's cool. So leverage literally everything that you can do with your phone. That's my number one suggestion before I get into live streaming, before I get into a website. Just use the heck out of that phone that you already have. The second thing that I would have you know is to create digital related goals for each year. And now I personally think of that for myself, but then I also think of it for the church. Now I'll give you an example, okay? In 2018, at the end of the year, my personal New Year's resolution for 2019 was that I would learn to edit video. And funny enough, that was just what God had put on my heart. I always knew how to yell at our video editors and tell them what I wanted, but I didn't know how to actually do it myself. And I just said, you know what? I just feel like God's put it on my heart. I want to learn how to speak this language, so at least when I'm at least if nothing else, I can talk in a way that is understandable. I know what it's like. So I got pretty good at it in 2019. I'm no amazing editor, but I got decent of it. And in 2019, I started, by the end of the year, I was getting better and better. And man, looking back over 2020, I see how God used that in our church because we had several people on our team who were having to edit lots of different videos just to make Sunday happen every time and pump that out. So one of my personal ones was to learn to edit video and to do that, but I also make tech-related goals for the year for our church. And so here is one of my digital ministry-related goals for our church every year, okay? And this is the one that is going to take sacrifice for all of you guys, especially if you're thinking about the money of the church. One of my goals for the church every year is to budget 1 to 1.5% of the church's annual budget towards tech-related stuff. That's not people, that's stuff. Now for us, that translates to about $9,000 a year. And so you can do the math on what that means. We have about $6,000 a year that we can put towards audiovisual stuff, and about $3,000 of that is electronic. And as you look at how that breaks down and how that works, it might sound like a lot at the beginning, but y'all know if you've ever had a computer, they break sometimes, right? If you've ever had, something in your own house that breaks, you don't tolerate it very long, you fix it, you buy a new one, and same thing happens in the church. And that's not even talking about raising the bar of your game, that's just talking about dealing with stuff that breaks as it comes along. And so, $9,000 goes really fast in this kind of world. And so you have to budget for dealing with the influx of things that's going to break, but then also thinking of, hey, what do we want to do that we're not doing that we could do better? So I'll give you a few examples in the last couple of years that we've done. In 2020, We bought 2 Canon C200s. Now that was a lot more than $6,000, okay? I'm just letting you know. But we had the cash flow at the time. There was a great need, and we did it. We pulled the trigger, and we have never regretted or looked back on that decision once. 2021, we updated some stuff with our lighting system. We upgraded our soundboard to get a new one because our previous soundboard was 10 years old. And one of the things that we realized with doing online is you have to be able to think through what all the fail points are to be able to live stream. And in order to be able to communicate and connect with your online audience, if one of those fail points goes bad and you don't have a way to replace it quickly, you can't talk to that crowd on that day. Now there's been maybe once or twice that we've had to cut off the feed. I think maybe only once in the last year. Am I right about that? When the sound...
It was down for like 10 or 15 minutes.
Okay, so they repaired it quick. So we try to think of redundant systems because, you know, if something goes bad, you want to be able to get back up on as quick as you can. So one of the things we realized we didn't have a redundant system for was a secondary audio console. And you know, in the world of live streaming and things like that, you need to have a custom mix that goes out to the online audience or it doesn't sound very good, right? So we upgraded to another board, and I kind of was looking ahead because I'm seeing all this supply chain stuff from China and all that going, okay, if this board goes out today, I can't go on bhphoto.com and have it by the end of the week. If the shipping times are 10 to 14 weeks, sometimes even beyond that. So we pulled the trigger, it's like, okay, let's do it. So anyway, the point is this, think through what the things are that you are going to need to have redundant systems to improve your ministry, what's breaking that you have to do, but try to, as much as you can, and if you're not the lead pastor, or if you are the lead pastor but your board isn't supportive of it, just try as much as you can to convince the people who are around you that you need to plan for 1 to 1.5% of your church's annual budget every single year. Whether you like it or not, you put it in there, and if by the grace of God you don't have to spend it, okay, that's a blessing, but you need to have it in there in case you do. Now 2022 is here. We have some goals for this year. One of them on my radar is that probably in the next couple years we're going to have to make our way to 4K. And we have just been 1080 for our streaming for a long time. And so we've kind of like slowly, okay, this thing does 4K, then you add that one and it does, and you just got to keep building up to it because now everybody's TVs are 4K. For the longest time, I didn't think that was that big a deal because, like, who needs to see me in 4K? I'm not going to be that much more impressive. But as things evolve and improve, you're going to have to go along with that. So the point is this, your goals are going to be different, okay, with your tech-related budget. But I sincerely believe that all of your churches can and all of your churches should plan for 1 to 1.5% of your annual budget to go towards tech-related stuff. Now here's another thing I'll put out. That has been one that we've done in the last year and a half and even more recently. You probably also need to budget for a person. It's just one of these things where the ball game has changed in church, where you're not just talking to the people in the room anymore. And to talk to the crowd online when you've got sophisticated systems that involve cameras, that involve multiple audio engineers, or at least one who's doing 2 things, and all the volunteers that are involved in that, it's probably going to be something that's going to need a person to work towards in some capacity. So another real thing that I'd love for you to write down about digital ministry that any church can do is to constantly identify, recruit, and train individuals with tech-related tasks. You're never going to feel like you have enough volunteers to do it. You never will. Every week you're going to be short 2, 3 people somewhere. We are, and some weeks it feels like you're throwing it together. That is so normal, like from every church I talk to. It is what it is, and so it's going to feel like a rat race every week to pull it together and to make it happen. But as I look back over years of doing the church, everything has kind of always felt that way in different ways. We're always pulling people to serve. We're always pulling people to accomplish tasks, to further the kingdom. This is just a new way of doing that. And so I think but I do think it'd be very hard to continue to progress in 2022 without a person who wakes up thinking about that. They're taking care of the stuff, and who it's their job to make sure that it's going well. So digital ministry in 2022 is absolutely vital. It needs to be a part of the fabric of all of our churches. And so what I'd like to do with the remaining time is really just kind of hear like what's going on in each of your ministries, but specifically, and so I'm going to open it up. I'd like to just, maybe you just share a little bit about where you're at right now, and maybe just the next step that you see tech-wise for your church. And if there's something that I or Cameron can do, speak into, kind of help you, think through what those next steps are, just be happy to help in any way that we can. So I'll open it up.
I'll go. So we are running just basic live stream, right? So we kind of got things set up where we're running. We have a camera that can move around, but it's just a one shot, not multi-camera, right? So we can zoom in, we can zoom out, we can pan. The problem is that we're also recording all of our worship, and we're just running one board for everyone, and so the music does not sound great.
Okay.
I mean,
So you're saying you're running the same live mix that you're running into the...
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we don't have a way to, well, we still have volunteers, so I would need another person to run that board to be doing that live while we're doing it. So we don't have that right now. What are some solutions that you guys think of? Like if that's the scenario, like what do? Do you just say, hey, 'cause I'm at the point now I'm like, we should just not do the worship then if that's the case. Because I mean, I hate putting out a bad product.
Yeah.
Because that's just going to turn people away from actually wanting to enjoy the service. And we just move to, hey, we'll do announcements, we'll do the message, and we'll, scroll through, events that we're doing if that's going to be the thing that's going to be done.
That actually is a good solution in many cases. If you can't solve it right, I think cutting it out is a good first thought, with the goal of working towards doing it. What kind of board do you have? Do you know?
Ugh, you're asking the wrong guy.
Okay.
I know enough to know that we don't have two.
Okay.
So
there is, even in analog boards, you can do an aux-out mix. You just sometimes are limited in what it can do a little bit. So my first thing that I would say to you is budget to get either like a Behringer X32. They're about $2,000 for the big one. They have littler ones even cheaper than that. I would work towards it, and then slowly train someone who can do a secondary audio mix. But that is one of the most tricky parts. There is a cheater's way to do it, is if your mix in the room sounds good, some people just put room mics, literally. And
we
let
tried
be.
that. So we tried that as well.
Okay.
It did not grab, and I don't know if it's just the acoustics of our room just didn't really work for that.
And plus, if Bob walks by and he's talking with his buddy, you hear Bob on the mic, coming by. So it's not the best solution, but it.
I was gonna say, we tried a different solution too, which was we actually pre-recorded and almost made music videos. And then we would edit in the videos into, which works, and you get a great quality.
Yep.
And I think during COVID, we created 70 plus songs. So we would do like 6 on a Saturday. Like, hey, we're gonna record 6 songs.
Yeah.
We're gonna bang those out. The problem is that you realize as staffing, like, oh, that guy doesn't even work at the church anymore. Like that girl, she used to be here, now she's not. It just so it has that. It feels it's got a shelf life. It has a massive shelf life to it.
Yes. Yeah. I think your instincts are right on all regard. If it's better to put out less than bad, because that'll represent you poorly.
Yep.
And I think in 2022, live streaming is pretty important. There are still, if you do high quality on demand after, it's okay. But I think, I would work towards it. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, so he's right about that. Our biggest thing, our first year streaming, was the audio issue, because the in-house mix is great, and then you go back and listen to your recordings, and it's awful.
Yeah. Horrible.
So our biggest fix for that was a newer soundboard, which allowed us to do 2 separate mixes at the same time. So we'd have the one guy running the soundboard in the room, but I'd also have a guy sitting next to me with a pair of headphones and an iPad, just doing a completely separate mix that was just for the online to help alleviate that issue.
That's good.
I don't really see another way around that. Like you said, the room might sound terrible, and just so that's your first step there.
Yeah, but it sounds like if I could get, so you got the 2,000 plus to get the board, and then you also got to find the volunteer.
Yeah, then you have to learn how to use it. Like we have, the equipment's one thing, but I remember when I was learning to play golf, my friend's dad, I bought some new set of clubs, and my friend's dad would always say, it's not the bow and arrow, it's the Indian. And it was it's like stuck in my head, but I thought these set of clubs were gonna make me so much better, and I'm hacking it up out of there on the course, you know. So but the other part of it is, it's not until you like force yourself to learn something that you will, and sometimes like being like, okay, we're gonna do this, like we don't really know how, but we're gonna figure out, then that stretches your people to figure that out. So sometimes in that journey is the improvement or part of it that happens. And the other thing too is, you know, if you choose a popular board like the Behringer X32 or, you know, I mean YouTube, there's so much stuff, you know, you can learn them pretty easily. So I would say that's your next natural step, but to encourage you, your instincts are right. It's better to, you know, not post than to have bad content out there. That's really, really good. Really good.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You got it. What about the rest of you guys? Any questions? Any? Sure. Go ahead.
Okay, we are like bare bones right now. We
Okay.
kind of got parachuted into where we are now. My dad is retiring, and we were actually in Denver, but we went there to take over and I guess replant. Like it's basically a church plant because nothing's been touched in 30 years. Like
Okay.
our venue is we're doing, you know, all these changes. And it's beautiful inside. The outside is horrible still, but the inside's beautiful. And our biggest thing is we need to start live streaming. So for us, it's like we have literally no budget for that at all. Yeah, we came with the Behringer board. We have like state-of-the-art equipment, musicians, singers, all that. I think our biggest lack is the streaming, and that's why I came because
Okay.
are you using I'm
You're
also
talking on
a
the
worship
video side.
leader. Yeah, so I'm a
Okay.
worship leader too. So I'm learning right now how to use multi-tracks with this new thing. 'Cause I was doing it. If you saw how we were doing worship and I was using loops, it'd make you laugh because it's no budget and how we just Jimmy rigged it because we had no money. But now I'm starting to use playback. They've come up with more services to do stuff, and I'm learning that program at the same time. I have two really great tech guides who understand the board.
Okay.
We went to one other church and they left the scenes in the wrong thing. And the last Sunday morning I was like,
Right.
why is the board not working?
Yeah.
So those are all the issues I'm trying to deal with. And on top of that, trying to stream, like, is there any cheap programs for streaming to start with other than Facebook Live? Like,
Yes.
would you use ProPresenter? Do you know, like, because I know that's probably the most expensive one. And right now we use Song Select for me to get like chord charts to
Yeah.
certain people. And then we use, there's one other program that we bought. It's not ProPresenter, it's the old one that everybody used
Easy
to.
worship or
Yes,
something?
yes. So that's where we're at right now as far as that. Like,
Okay. So you're-
preaching wise, singing wise, we have all that stuff. We don't have, this isn't our gift. So
Well, first off, you're halfway there with the audio side because there's all these studies that have shown that with video, people will watch a video with bad quality video if the audio is good. But if they turn the video on and it's good quality video but bad audio, they'll turn it right off.
Yeah.
So you're halfway there. And especially if you have a couple of people who already kind of know how it works, that, like with what he's saying, that's half the battle, really.
Yeah.
Because the video side's, I think, a little easier to learn in some respects and harder in others. So there are a lot of live streaming solutions out there. Cameron got us hooked for starters on OBS, which is actually a free program and it's actually the industry standard.
Okay.
And so, which is great because it's free, it's open source. It is a little techy, like you kind of need to be a tech person to understand OBS. And so I will tell you that. There are church-specific solutions for live streaming as well.
Church.online.
So that's the one that ports it out to the internet. But what she's talking about is actually the gear, right? And then the computer that runs it and all that.
so just to make it, because like what we hear on stage, these guys are so great. Like they're just really quirky guys that we just happen to get. One works for Spectrum and he does like live video, so he's just so good. So we hear on stage, we'll hear a video from someone that they record or face, we're like, is that us? Like it sounds so good, but we have nobody to actually do the whole service.
Yeah.
And so I was gonna this Sunday just start doing a Facebook Live, but sometimes with internet it cuts out, and I just need a program that's easy and affordable. Even
Yeah.
if, I
So
have
there's
to buy it.
multiple parts to that. Okay. So you have the cameras, right? The cameras talk to some system that switches them, right? Or if it's just one, then that's got to go in the computer. And then within that, We have a system called Restream that ports it out to multiple streaming services. Otherwise, you only can pick one, either Facebook or YouTube.
Oh, okay.
When we first, and I'll let Kim talk in just a second, he's got,
Yeah.
but when we first started, he really pushed me to go to YouTube. And at the time, I was like, oh man, people are on Facebook, but I'm so glad that I listened to you, because YouTube is actually where, that's now, like, that's my standard for what represents an actual person.
So we need a channel,
Yeah,
basically.
you need a
Okay.
channel.
Okay.
Because like Facebook counts a view if you're looking at it for like 7 seconds or 12 seconds or something. That's not a person, they're just scrolling by.
Yeah.
You know, it's like somebody walking by your house and saying they went to your church, you know? It's not, but YouTube actually tells you how many people do a long view,
Yeah.
right? And so for me, a long view means they put it on their TV. So if I were you, so there's a lot of layers to what you're talking
Right.
about. But you need to probably figure out a camera system,
Yes.
B, software that like they can understand, maybe a switcher if there's multiple cameras, and then it's getting all that stuff to the platforms like Facebook, YouTube, wherever you want to put it. So Cameron, was there something with this?
And one thing you said, the biggest was not having the budget for it.
Yeah.
So like for us, when we started, our board wasn't on board with us doing that. Like, you want to spend how much money doing video? They didn't see the value in that. I ended up buying, I think, a refurbished Canon camera for like $250. Just a used one single little cheap camera up in our balcony. And we
It's
just
a video
started streaming
camera.
it. Yes, a
Okay.
video camera. Just used camera. And we started just putting it up there. At first it was for people with kids. We streamed it off to our community center. Audio was so then we fixed that issue. Got a better sound system. Then started putting it out to YouTube for people that were either sick or out of town for the week. And then our board started saying, oh, okay, this is actually resonating with people, this and that, and we were able to get budget for it.
Yeah.
So even just starting small is a
Yeah.
good point, so at least you can show your team,
The potential.
hey,
Yeah,
yes.
so he knows how to put the cameras into the board and mix and all that stuff. He's done it for us when we've had to do conference stuff, like borrow the camera. But it's just getting like what camera would be good to start with just one, and you know, is there a class or online class we could take to learn it?
I think the
Yeah,
biggest
or-
thing I would say about camera stuff is it's easier if you pick a family of cameras and stick with it.
Uh-huh.
And the reason is because of color matching issues down the line. Like, so mostly like we have all Canon stuff right now, but it's because, you know, if you had a Sony in the mix, it's got a different look. If you had, you know, so it doesn't really matter. But for, you know, like he's saying, for stuff online, like I'm saying for used gear, people are getting rid of stuff, you know, you can do a lot with things as long as it's got that live stream output. So when we,
Okay.
let me say one thing I didn't share about our Canon C200s. When we were looking and I was thinking through what I wanted and why I picked those, I wanted 3 things. I wanted I wanted it to have a really good autofocus capacity because we work with volunteers. And so it couldn't be something that, you know, I need a professional cameraman for.
Yeah.
Now it turns out we learned it's not perfect, but that's a story for a different day. I wanted something, secondly, that would allow us to switch out different lenses. You know, you get different looks, that kind of thing. Thirdly, I wanted something that outputted to a live signal with no like overlay weird feeds. Like, so that's why, because what people do is they take a DSLR and they'll think like, oh, I can live stream from this because I can output it to a TV. But then you know, there's like the battery indicator and all that other, so you
Yeah.
can't really. So that's what I wanted, is I wanted those 3 things, and actually for long format, because a lot of the DSLRs would cut you off at different points and stuff like that. So you have to think through what you need first, and then go, okay, here's 5 sets of cameras that would do it. And then, you know, it's like, okay, I can only afford one of these. Well, that's the one you're going to pick. Or I can't afford that one. Well, what one did they have 3 years ago that I might find online? You know, that's used. So you just kind of have to keep, you know, whittling at it a little bit. So anyway, I don't know if that helps or not. But,
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know if this will help, but when we were in the middle of building like an outdoor patio for like 250 people, and so we started doing our services out there, but we didn't have any of the tech hooked up yet, so we had to set up a whole sound system. And at that point I couldn't move our Blackmagic switcher out there to live stream. So what we ended up doing was through OBS, through a Mac, there's an app on the iPhone called Shoot, and it pretty much makes your iPhone without any of like the overlays.
That's awesome.
So it's just, and then OBS recognizes it as a camera.
Oh, wow.
It's like a $5 app, and we literally just put it on a tripod, use that as a live stream.
Okay, what's it called? Shoot?
Yeah, Shoot.
And I have
That's
OBS
money.
right down here.
That's
What
money.
is OBS again? Sorry.
It's
It's open broadcast software.
Oh, software, okay.
You had a question?
Well, I just wanted to add to that. So my church, we started with an iPad, you know, and I hate Apple. Like personally, I hate
She does too.
it. But you know what? Like, I got connected with Switcher, the app Switcher, and now we have 5 iPhones working on it, you know, and it's amazing what it does.
Wow.
Like, yeah, so.
I didn't know about that. That's cool.
Yeah, so we have 5 different views. You know, we put one in the balcony. They're cheap iPhone 5s and 6s. You know, we asked the congregation if anyone had an extra one laying around. That's how it started. And then some guy's like, you know what? I'll buy you guys an 11. So, you know, he came through and bought us that. So little by little, it's just been coming through.
So you have 5 iPhones and you run it into the program called Switcher.
Switcher, yeah. So, and Switcher charges you, I think it's like $40 a month, but it's connected straight to, you know, your Facebook, YouTube.
Wow.
So it has all the little channels to go,
That's
and
awesome.
you connect your laptop and put the PowerPoint in also. So it's a real awesome app.
I mean, that right there, there's several of those kind of solutions out there that I've heard of. And so that sounds like a really good one. A lot of other churches have gone to, and we didn't do this in our context, but I've heard from 4 people here today that because they didn't want to deal with volunteers running cameras and all that, they got these PTZ systems. So it's basically one guy or one woman that is there with a controller, and they can, like, you know, joystick, zoom in and out. So it's just one person to man all the cameras. We didn't go that route. There's
What's that called?
PTZ. It stands for,
Pan tilt zoom.
what is it?
Just pan tilt zoom.
Pan tilt zoom. There you
Okay.
go. So it's basically a camera on a moving head that zooms in and out, and you can remotely control it. And then they come with a little mini switcher. One guy that I was talking to, he got a system like that that was like $3,300 for 3 cameras or something like that. But that sounds like a lot, but it's really not when you're talking about, because that would be like your streaming solution. You know, yours with iPhones, that's even cheaper. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, there's a million ideas out there. It's just finding what will work and then figuring out how to keep making it better.
Yeah.
So that I think, you know, and to add to his point, you know, you keep the not so good content off the internet.
Yeah.
You know, we've gone back and unlisted some stuff. You know, everybody does their fair share of that. So,
It's captured in that picture.
Yeah, because we just do
It's not filtered.
through an iPhone or through a G32 and to Facebook, and we have a QPad for audio, and so we don't have much at
okay.
all.
And how's it going? Is it working for you?
It seems to be.
Okay.
But like you say, you know, with Facebook, they count everybody that flips through, so who knows?
Are you doing YouTube yet, or just Facebook only? Okay, so that would be my first thought for you, is add YouTube. And the other thing that I make Cameron do is, like, yeah, we have our stream, right, that we do on Sunday, but I make him make a cleaned up version for like the standalone and all that stuff, because you do, you know, that's what most people after the fact are going to come back and notice and stuff like that, because you want to put your best foot forward on out there with what people see, and
Do you take down the live one after that?
usually we unlist it, don't we, or no?
No,
And you-
yeah.
Okay.
So you'll have the live
There are
version.
some though that we have unlisted for sure. I can definitely
So you
testify to
have
that.
you have the live version, but then you repost a cleaned up version.
Right, and
On
we
YouTube.
make then from our website, which we haven't gotten into website stuff in here, but my good friend Russ Cantu, who he started a company called Catalyst Church Creative. If you Google Catalyst Church Creative, they make church websites. He recommends every church do a total refresh on their website every 2 years. We can't afford that, we go every 4. Okay? What he shared with me, which was kind of eye-opening, he sent me a study, I think it was Wall Street Journal or something like that, that showed for every, showed the power of the website still. You know, we all think about social media as the most important thing. Well, this study he showed me, for every 200 followers that you have on social media, and you get an average of 2 interactions per post. That's like nothing. However, the website, you might get less views or, you know, people going to it, but way more interaction and stuff that they'll do on there. So he's encouraging churches to stop deprioritizing their websites. And so anyway, so that's really important. So then what matters for that with your cleaned up version is, you know, if most of those people are being driven through your website, then they're landing on content that's got your best foot forward, that shows what you want to show at that time. So the web is not dead, the website, as much as, you know, we think, oh, people don't go to our website. They are. You just need to figure out how to drive them where you want them to go.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You said you guys are using Restream to go into both Facebook and YouTube. Are there any because we thought about doing that, but we decided to just kind of invest just on YouTube, because we don't want, because we have a lot of older congregants too, so we don't want to start confusing people. So we were doing Facebook, but then we moved to YouTube. But I guess what benefits are there to doing both? Obviously the audience reach, but just
different crowds.
Yeah.
I think the more you can put yourself out there, the better. But if you have to prioritize one, YouTube. That's what he showed me, and he was totally right. I'm glad we've done. So we've actually, from pre-pandemic to today, what was our subscriber when we first started the?
I don't remember exactly, but we went up like 600 or 700
Just in a
subscribers
year
in
and a
that
half or
Wow.
something like that. And we really, you know, because we invested in that. And one thing that we did too for a season, this was before the pandemic, come to think of it, we were trying to build up our YouTube page, and we asked the whole church, hey, log in, subscribe. We made it part of like the announcements for about 4 weeks in a row. And then the pandemic, I just connecting the dots on some of those things. But there's a guy named Sean Cannell. We did some of his strategies for how to build your YouTube page. We didn't follow it like perfectly, but if you go follow him, he's a Christian guy. And so he can give you some ideas. But I would definitely, to answer your question, I would put it out there for both. Because there are people who are going to watch on Facebook who won't be on YouTube. They won't probably watch as long, but you know,
at least out there.
it's out there. And I mean, like, you probably all have the Instagram stories, right? Have you guys seen it yet where a church is doing their service on an Instagram live story? Have you guys seen that? And I'm like, how are they doing it? Because you can't output that from a Restream or something like that. So they're making some kind of custom thing that they're coding through Restream is what I figured out how they do it. It's not a button where you can just add it. And they make some look, but when I'm on there, like if some church is live and or some pastor, and I click and I realize it's not them being live, it's just their service, I'll stay for, you know, maybe a minute and then turn it off. So I don't think by in droves people are, you know, staying on social media to watch your church service for a long time.
Right.
But I do still think it's good to be on there. And we try to post several pieces of content per week. We got the sermon, we try to do something with the worship. We don't always hit that. And we have some kids content on our YouTube page, which interestingly enough, our kids songs are actually the most popular content on our YouTube page for the last year and a half. We have a Jesus Loves Me that I just checked has 48,000 views or something like that. And it's like, you know, my sermon's like 43 views. You know? So, you know, you never know what's going to hit. But it's important to try things, figure out what your niche is, keep improving it, start somewhere. We just keep on that little engine that could mentality, and we're like, okay, we're just going to keep doing it, keep making it better. And I'll say this, to put a period on this, and then if you guys want to talk, I'm here. If you implement a couple things to improve today or in the next couple months, and you look back in 2, 3, and 4 years, you're going to look back and go, wow, we have come so far from where we were when we started this. You know, maybe it's just you start with a single camera, maybe it is the iPhone solution or whatever else, but man, fast forward 4 years, you're going to be better at it. More people are going to be watching, I guarantee it. Your content will have better content. And you're going to look back and you're just going to feel proud because you're going to have this, record's not the right word, but kind of personal history or ministry history, if you will, of watching God move. So keep at it. You can do it. You guys, you know, from what I'm hearing, we're all, you know, in the same wavelengths of trying to reach people and just, you know, doing it in 2022 in a different way. So I'm glad you guys all came. I hope some of it was helpful. Appreciate you guys. Glad you're here.
Good to see you.
So I'll put a period there, but I'll hang out. If anybody has any other questions for me, Cameron knows how the technical part of a lot of it works out. I'm the big ideas.
I have a question, bro.
Yeah.
So my congregation is mostly older, you know, and now after COVID, half of them didn't come back, you know. Yeah, well, half of the young ones didn't come back, and they're blaming it on us streaming. So, you know, I have a few that are like against the streaming or this
You're
and that.
saying your older people
Yeah.
are blaming the folks not coming back on streaming.
Cause
Yeah.
they're getting lazy.
So is it a lot of people or how?
Well, we're small. We had about 80 before, and now we're down to like 45.
Okay.
So
My experience from everything I've seen and heard is that the average church today is somewhere between 50 to 70% of wherever they
Yeah.
were pre-COVID.
yeah,
So I think you're right in the ballpark.
yeah, that's what I'm
Everybody
I'm still
else
pushing
is.
it. Like I'm not gonna, you know, I'm gonna push hard for it not to stop or anything. But you know, I just had a few.
the flip, where I would push back on some of that is go actually talk to those people. I bet if you're in a church of 80, you're like, oh, it's this kid and that one and you know their friend. Why don't you, you know, reach out to them and ask them? And I think what you'll find is the answer is a lot more complicated.
Oh,
than
yeah.
they
Oh, yeah.
stream. It's you know a variety of things that have happened in people's lives. We have not found at any point in our journey that streaming our service led to people not coming to church. Never once has that proved to be true. All it did is it gave people a way to continue to connect if they were uncomfortable being there or...
It took a little while for people to come back once we opened back up, once the pandemic
Yeah.
kind of eased up, because they got so comfortable with being at home, but the numbers
Yes.
did eventually come back.
It's true, and
So-
some of it, yeah. I mean, we're just seeing some families who are starting to come back, and I do think, you know, this is where I'm going to be the contrarian to Josh Hussman on stage. Okay, he's in Indiana, we're in California. It's different, and so you know, there is still a good deal of Christian culture that is going on, especially in somewhere like Indiana. And I love Josh Hussman. Love you, Josh, if you're watching this. Okay, but. You know, where we are, it's just a different climate in this day and age, and especially with the young population, the things that are going on in their life. I think if anything, those kids, you know, maybe that's a lifeline to them, or, you know, so, but yeah, it definitely sounds to me like you're right in the ballpark of where every church pretty much is. You know, pre-COVID, we ran anywhere between 235 or 225 and 265-ish. I would say right now we're somewhere between 170 to 190 with adults and kids, somewhere in there on a Sunday. So, you know, you just kind of do the math and figure out for where you're at. But yeah,
Cool.
I wouldn't blame.
Yeah, I
I
don't.
wouldn't take that on you.
Yeah, I don't believe it either. It's like, you know, we're getting people tithing from Florida. You know what I mean? It's like, look at the other good stuff coming out of it. You know.
That's good. That's good. All right.
So I took over the media department.
Okay.
So I don't know what was set up before, but just if you have some direction on having the license to do the worship songs on, because like with YouTube, like you'll either get flagged, or Facebook, like you'll actually with Facebook, you used to get they just stop it.
Yeah.
They just stop the stream.
So there's multiple elements to that. I'll give you a few quick ideas, things that we've learned, and then Cameron wants to chime in. So the one, CCLI has a video license that all of us pay to stream, right? But here's the thing. CCLI is not like buddies with YouTube and Facebook. They don't have friends, they don't call each other, okay? So all the CCLI license allows you to do, which we pay it every year. I make sure Austin pays the bill and he pays the extra for making sure we can stream and all that, because it's the right thing to do. But all that enables you to do is to be able to perform Chris Tomlin or Hillsong songs in a live stream format without being sued by Hillsong. Now, Hillsong has a proprietary agreement through their record label with YouTube. Hillsong has a different agreement with their record label with Facebook. So there's going to be different ones. So oftentimes, you know, if you get a flag or you get a copyright issue, there are ways you got to go in and you can say you can contest it. But are they going to listen to it? Is it going to work? In reality, sometimes they'll take it down. They'll cut that part out of your stream entirely. So yes, you're right. The algorithms are so good that we've even found, like, because theoretically, if you like cover a song, you should be able to do that without them flagging it. But the algorithms are so good, they pick up on the melodies, they pick up on the lead lines,
Yeah, it's not in the same key.
and they find it, you know. And it's like, I don't know how they do what they do, but they know how to find the songs. They'll put an ad on it. A few workarounds that you can do with pre-posted content. It's not going to help you so much with live streaming issues like you're talking about, but number one, never use a copyrighted video in any context. You're just asking to get flagged, okay? So that's one thing. You know, if you're going to edit a video for your church that's like a highlight video, don't pick a Hillsong song to be the music bed underneath it, because you know Facebook's not even going to let you post it. They're going to take it right down. So there's the few workarounds are, of course, the couple free versions, the YouTube public library and the Facebook free audio library. You can pull from those two. But the problem is the artists can change their minds, and we've had that happen where it was a song that was open source, and then they changed their mind, like, just kidding, we want money for this now, so now there's an ad on our video, so that can happen too. We have a subscription service that we've used, MusicBed, for some of it, but it's not perfect. It's like $20 a month if you're a nonprofit. We also buy some songs like through Audio Jungle, some places like that, and then that way you own that. If it is, and one thing I had Austin do a few times is, because during COVID, like someone mentioned, they produced a lot of songs, right? So if you go back and you take the mixes of the songs that you made, take out the vocal and take out the lead line, YouTube now usually the algorithms can't pick up what it is anymore. So then you have like your own Chick-fil-A elevator music, you know, if you need it for background stuff. But yeah, you're right. There are, and each platform uses it differently, and they all have different rules about it, and it's tricky. Do you have anything else you'd add to that, or?
I would say that's why we started doing a cleaned up video after, so we'll leave the live stream up, because it's going to get claims no matter what he was saying with CCLI. So it's great, even if you use, say, Play a Hillsong song, Sony might not like that, because they're the record label, and they're going to put an ad on your videos. It's not even worth contesting anymore. We just leave them alone. They haven't taken down any of our videos anymore.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that'll get your content taken down is using like clips from the NBA, or say, I think one year Willie used the Peanuts Christmas, and that was an instant.
We got a flag.
So just watch what you're putting out more than anything.
Yeah. Yeah, the old days of like, oh, let's do a sermon clip and show this video, that, you know, you can't just go do that anymore if you're streaming, unfortunately. You have to be aware of it.
Even images, like we've had investors that have wanted to put like images of, you know, a Disney character or something just for an illustration. It's like, yeah, I don't think that's the best idea.
Yeah, they're gonna find it.
Yeah,
The algorithms are very good. They're very good. So.
The way we've gotten around that is having a camera angle with the screen or projector behind it. So say, while Pastor Kyle's talking, you can see it behind him, but it doesn't kind
It's
of
not
catch
full
up the system.
overlay. Yeah, it's not full overlay. It tricks it a little bit. Yeah.
So-
There's ways of doing that. Yeah. We're just always every day having to rethink how that stuff works. And anyway, we're trying to write some more original worship song material stuff, so we have even more things these days.
Good motivation.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.